It was February 28, 1983, a night that television history will never forget. Across America, an estimated 106 million people sat glued to their screens, tissues in hand, hearts pounding. For over a decade, MASH had been a staple of American life, a show that managed to mix gut-wrenching emotion with razor-sharp humor, all set against the backdrop of war. But on that cold February night, the laughter faded. The tears came. And when the final credits rolled, something shifted in the television landscape forever. The episode was titled Goodbye, Farewell, and Amen. It ran for 2.5 hours, the length of a feature film, and it marked the end of one of the most beloved series ever created. But it wasn't just any finale. It was the episode that forced fans to face the brutality of war, the fragility of life, and the emotional scars left behind. It was, without question, the infamous scene that took MASH off the air for good and left an entire generation shaken. Before we reach that final, heart-wrenching scene, we need to understand why MASH meant so much to so many. Premiering in 1972, MASH, Mobile Army Surgical Hospital, was based on the 1970 film of the same name, which itself was inspired by the book by Dr. Richard Hornberger, a former Army surgeon. The show followed a team of doctors and nurses stationed in South Korea during the Korean War, people who used humor as a shield against the horrors around them. At first, the series was meant to be a sitcom, a quirky comedy about Army life. But under the creative leadership of Larry Gelbart and Gene Reynolds, it evolved into something deeper. It tackled death, mental illness, trauma, and the absurdity of war. It wasn't afraid to make viewers laugh one moment and cry the next. And then there was Alan Alda, the man who became the face of MASH. His character, Captain Benjamin Franklin Hawkeye Pierce, wasn't just a doctor, he was a moral compass. Sarcastic, brilliant, rebellious, and deeply human, Hawkeye reminded viewers that even in chaos, empathy mattered. By the late 70s, MASH had become more than a show, it was a reflection of America itself. Though set in the 1950s, it often mirrored the Vietnam War, which had only recently ended. It questioned authority, mocked bureaucracy, and forced audiences to confront uncomfortable truths. By 1983, after 11 seasons and over 250 episodes, the cast and crew knew it was time to say goodbye. The actors were exhausted, emotionally and physically. Alan Alda, who had directed and written many episodes by that point, wanted to end the show with meaning, not with a punchline, but with closure. The writers decided to create a feature-length finale that would wrap up each character's story and leave nothing unresolved. But they also wanted to remind viewers what MASH had always been about, the cost of war. Filming the finale took months. The cast described it as emotionally draining. It wasn't just the end of a TV show, Alda once said. It was the end of a family. The episode opens with the Korean War nearing its end. Peace talks are finally making progress. The doctors and nurses at the 4077th are tired, hopeful, but wary. They've seen too much death to celebrate too soon. Hawkeye, who had always been the emotional core of the show, is now deeply broken. The trauma of what he's seen, and what he's lost, has finally caught up with him. He's being treated at a psychiatric hospital by Dr. Sidney Friedman, a recurring character who served as the show's quiet conscience. During their sessions, Hawkeye recalls a horrific memory from a recent bus evacuation. At first, he says the group had to hide from enemy soldiers, and he begged a Korean woman to keep her chicken quiet. The woman complied, and the enemy passed. But as the therapy continues, a darker truth begins to surface. What Hawkeye thought was a chicken wasn't a chicken at all. It was a baby. The woman had smothered her own infant to keep the group from being discovered. That revelation hits like a gut punch. The moment it sinks in, Hawkeye breaks down completely. The audience, too, is left speechless. It's one of the most devastating scenes ever shown on television, raw, unflinching, and deeply human. That was the infamous scene. The one that would define not just MASH, but television history itself. For 11 years, viewers had laughed at the antics of Hawkeye, Trapper, Radar, and the rest of the 4077th. But in that moment, there was no laughter. Only silence. The brilliance of that scene was in its restraint. There was no music, no melodrama, just the crushing weight of realization. It wasn't just about Hawkeye's breakdown. It was about the audience finally facing the same truth the characters had lived with for years, that war dehumanizes everyone it touches. Television, at the time, had never gone that far. Sitcoms were supposed to make people laugh, not confront trauma. But MASH refused to play by those rules. It used comedy to expose tragedy. And in that final episode, it stripped everything bare. Even decades later, that scene remains one of the most talked about moments in television. Critics called it a masterpiece of emotional storytelling. Veterans who watched the show said it captured the psychological toll of war better than any documentary ever could. After Hawkeye's therapy, the episode shifts toward closure. The armistice is signed. The war is over. One by one, the members of the 4077th begin to pack up and say goodbye. Radar isn't there. He had left earlier in the series, but Klinger, Hot Lips, BJ, Father Mulcahy, and Colonel Potter all get their moments. Each farewell feels like a real-life goodbye between the actors, not just their characters. Alan Alda later revealed that much of the emotion you see in those scenes wasn't acting. They were genuinely saying farewell to a chapter of their lives. And then, as Hawkeye boards the helicopter to leave camp one final time, he looks down and sees something written in rocks. BJ, his best friend, had arranged them into a single word. Goodbye. No dialogue. No music. Just the sound of the helicopter rising and the camera pulling back as Hawkeye looks down in silence. That was it. After 11 years, it was over. When MASH aired its finale, it became the most watched television episode in US history, a record it held for nearly 3 decades. More people watched Hawkeye say goodbye than watched the moon landing broadcast live. Newspapers the next day described it as a national event. Across the country, water usage spiked during commercial breaks because people held off going to the bathroom until the ads. Families gathered together to watch. Veterans watched quietly, some in tears. Even the show's creators were stunned by the reaction. They knew MASH mattered, but they didn't realize how deeply it had become woven into American culture. Goodbye, farewell, and amen wasn't just a finale, it was a statement. It proved that television could be art. It could be political, emotional, and real, all at once. And yet, the very thing that made MASH so great was also what made it impossible to continue. The show had grown too big, too meaningful. There was no way to top that ending. The infamous chicken scene symbolized everything MASH stood for: the human cost of survival, the price of compassion, and the limits of humor in the face of horror. It was an ending that wasn't neat or easy, because war never is. When the credits rolled that night, millions of people felt as if they were saying goodbye to old friends. For years, they had laughed and cried with the doctors and nurses of the 4077th. Now, they were gone, not with a bang, but with a quiet, devastating farewell. But what became of the actors who brought those unforgettable characters to life? The wisecracking surgeons, the tough nurses, the commanding officers, and the beloved oddballs of the 4077th. Let's revisit the people behind the uniforms and find out what life looked like after MASH. If MASH had a heartbeat, it was Alan Alda. As Captain Benjamin Franklin Hawkeye Pierce, he was the show's moral compass, sarcastic, brilliant, and deeply compassionate. But Alda wasn't just the star. He became one of its driving creative forces, writing and directing many of its most memorable episodes, including the finale itself. After the show ended, Alda didn't fade away. He continued acting, directing, and writing, proving that he was much more than the face of a hit sitcom. He earned 6 Emmy Awards for his work on MASH and went on to appear in acclaimed films like The Aviator, for which he received an Oscar nomination, Crimes and Misdemeanors, and Bridge of Spies. But Alda's greatest legacy may be his lifelong dedication to science and communication. He created the Alan Alda Center for Communicating Science at Stony Brook University, helping scientists explain their work in ways everyone can understand. Now in his late 80s, Alda has openly spoken about his diagnosis with Parkinson's disease, yet he remains active, optimistic, and deeply curious about life. In interviews, he often reflects on MASH, saying that it taught him how laughter can live right next to heartbreak, and that's where life truly happens. Loretta Swit played Major Margaret Houlihan, the strong, no-nonsense head nurse whose character evolved more than almost any other on the show. In the early seasons, she was often portrayed as strict and uptight, the butt of many jokes. But over time, MASH gave her depth, dignity, and power. After MASH, Swit continued acting in theater and television, appearing in guest roles and films, but she shifted her focus to activism. A passionate animal rights advocate, she founded Sweetheart Animal Alliance, a non-profit organization that promotes animal rescue and care. Swit has said she's proud of how MASH treated her character, transforming her from a caricature into a complex, independent woman in a male-dominated environment. Margaret became a symbol for women who wanted to be respected for their talent, not dismissed for their gender, she said in a 2018 interview. Few characters in TV history are as unforgettable as Corporal Max Klinger, the Lebanese-American soldier from Toledo, Ohio, who spent years wearing dresses in an attempt to get discharged from the army on grounds of insanity. Jamie Farr brought Klinger to life with humor and heart. What began as a running gag became one of the show's most beloved and surprisingly nuanced characters. By the end of MASH, Klinger had matured. He stopped trying to escape and became a responsible leader who stayed behind to help rebuild Korea. After MASH, Farr reprised his role in the short-lived spin-off After MASH*, which followed Klinger, Colonel Potter, and Father Mulcahy as they adjusted to post-war life. Though the show only lasted 2 seasons, Farr's charm never faded. He went on to appear in several TV series, films, and stage productions, and he became a proud symbol for Arab American representation in Hollywood. Even in his 80s, Farr remains active, often appearing at fan conventions and MASH reunions, where his warmth and humor still shine. When Wayne Rogers, who played Trapper John, left the series after season 3, many wondered if anyone could fill his shoes. Then Mike Farrell arrived as Captain BJ Honeycutt, and he did more than fill them. He made the role his own. BJ was different from Trapper. He was quieter, more introspective, and deeply devoted to his wife and daughter back home. His friendship with Hawkeye became the emotional heart of the show's later seasons. After MASH, Farrell continued acting, producing, and became an outspoken human rights activist. He worked on social justice issues, served as a goodwill ambassador, and used his platform to speak about peace, justice, and compassion, values deeply rooted in MASH's DNA. Now in his mid-80s, Farrell has said that being part of MASH was one of the greatest gifts of his life, not just for the fame it brought, but for the friendships and lessons that came with it. Replacing an iconic character is never easy, but Harry Morgan did it seamlessly. When McLean Stevenson left the show, Morgan stepped in as Colonel Sherman T. Potter, the kind, wise, and fatherly leader of the 4077th. Potter wasn't just a commander, he was a mentor, the heart of the camp. His mixture of discipline and warmth gave MASH its moral backbone during its later seasons. After MASH, Morgan reprised his role in After MASH and continued acting in television and film. He remained active in Hollywood for decades before passing away in 2011 at the age of 96. His fellow cast members have all said that he was exactly what he seemed: gentle, funny, and full of integrity. Father Francis Mulcahy, the compassionate and selfless chaplain, was brought to life by William Christopher, whose quiet strength and moral clarity made him one of the show's most endearing figures. After MASH, Christopher also joined After MASH, and like many of his castmates, focused much of his life on helping others. He became an advocate for autism awareness, inspired by his own son who was on the autism spectrum. Christopher passed away in 2016, but he left behind a legacy of kindness, both on and off screen. His portrayal of Mulcahy remains one of television's most genuine depictions of faith and humanity. Radar was the heart of MASH's early years. Gary Berghoff played the sweet, innocent company clerk who seemed to know everything before it happened. His departure in season 8 left fans heartbroken. And his goodbye episode, where he waved farewell to the helicopter carrying his friends away, remains one of the most emotional moments in the series. After leaving MASH, Berghoff stepped away from Hollywood for personal reasons, focusing on family and his love for wildlife art. He occasionally acted in guest roles and game shows, but mostly lived a quieter life, painting and advocating for environmental causes. Though he's largely out of the spotlight today, his portrayal of Radar remains one of the show's most beloved and timeless performances. Even decades after the show ended, the cast of MASH has remained close, a true television family. They've reunited several times for anniversaries and interviews, and their love for each other is still evident. Alan Alda once said, "When we were together on that set, something magical happened. We were more than colleagues, we were a unit, just like the 4077th. For many of them, MASH wasn't just a career milestone, it was a life-changing experience. They spent years together portraying laughter amid pain, compassion amid chaos. And when the cameras finally stopped rolling, those lessons stayed with them. MASH didn't end with its finale. Its spirit continues to live in every show that dares to mix comedy and truth, laughter and loss. Series like Scrubs, ER, and Grey's Anatomy owe part of their DNA to MASH.